is it? Everything I'm doing is going crazy tonight. Exit show, swap displays. That's what I'm looking for. What other classes?
8560 and 8620. They're not on that list.
Those are school plans and plant facilities and school finance. Those are oftentimes taken by someone who eventually is going to take a superintendent certification, but they're also available for anybody else. I've never had anybody that took school plans that said it didn't have a lot of good stuff.
And Kristen teaches that, right?
Yes. Sorry. Well, I can't get it to. I don't want.
Oh, you're in.
I'm in presenter tools, and I don't want to be.
I think
So,
it's when you go to slideshow.
I go to slideshow, play from start. Okay, there's presenter view. Now I don't want that. Now I've got it the other way around. Well, that's not so bad though. At least you're not seeing. If we're seeing it here, and even if it's on the recording, then they see it small. That's okay. Little square's better than nothing. In your folder, there is a handout with a circle that we're going to look at tonight, and behind that there is a survey, and that survey is being piloted by one of our doctoral candidates to look for what needs to be fixed, what needs to be tweaked, does it all make sense to you? And so he would like for you to take it for him tonight so that he has a set of data to run that with. It isn't going to be his actual study, so we don't have to ask your permission or anything. If you don't want to do it, you just don't do it. But what you should know is if you only answer part of the questions, you're either in or you're out. And so he has to have a complete set of answers for you to be one of his answers in the study. I always let people do that because I think it's also interesting for you to see what kind of things people are studying in this area and have some feeling like you have some input in new research of what's going on. So just give your first thought, your first answer, give your best shot that you have. No names, no anything with that. Again, this is a pilot, and after he gets that information back, he will tweak this. It's going to eventually go to a SurveyMonkey online thing. It's going to go out to many free administrators. So you're helping figure out how to make this work. ahead and just talk a bit over you finishing this up. You can put it back in the front of your folder when you get it finished, and I'll pull those and compile them together and hand them to him for scoring. And again, if you decided not to do it, that's fine. You can just turn partially or incomplete one in as well. And we won't know whose is whose. We'll never care nor know. But thank you for helping out, starting to create a new instrument, which is always an exciting thing to have something that we'll hopefully have some valid measures from. In working with papers, if you turned it in by Sunday, I should have it back to you, either in your folder or on Blackboard. If you're not seeing it on either one, and you turned it in before Sunday, you might want to stick a note in your folder. You could just write it on tonight's page that they're doing for where I should be finding it and why, what kind of document I'm looking for or whatever those things are. If you turned your papers or your responses in on Sunday or today, or Sunday, Monday or today, I see it there, but I just haven't had a chance to get quite caught up to time with that yet. Interesting things that came across especially with the motivation stories and examples that people had with that. It's interesting to me that sometimes when we meet together, you get a lot more interaction with one another, and you can ask a question in real time and not have to wait for an email or something. On the other hand, I heard what every single person had to say about that lesson, whereas tonight's lesson, only a few people will probably speak up and raise their hand and let me know what that is that you're thinking about. So that's why that folder is there with the square and the circle and so forth for tonight. That response folder is also a way that I can get some feedback on what'd you get, what are you still worried about, those types of things. You don't have to do the square and the circle if you want to. You can just write on the piece of paper, but don't forget to be filling out your folder each week because it helps me to know what you're thinking even if you don't say a lot. And we have a lot to cover tonight, so there isn't going to be a lot of discussion in this session because we are headed for our first exam next time around, and so I want to make sure that you're feeling pretty confident with what that's going to look like, that you're feeling good about where you are with the concepts that are involved in this, and so we got a few more left to cover. And these are some of my, I was said upstairs, this is probably one of my favorite topics in all of leadership. And when I tell somebody that they have good emotional intelligence, that's probably one of my highest accolades for them because I think it makes a big difference between those that are successful leaders and those that think they're successful leaders. And those that think they're successful leaders oftentimes are unaware of how they're coming off to other people, or they're unaware on how they're sounding. They sound good in their own ear, but they don't have that feedback loop going. The idea of emotional intelligence came about that they studied business leaders, and they took their IQs, and they said, are the smartest people in the company the leaders? And of course, if you ask anybody from a McDonald's worker to Harvard University, they probably say no, that the CEO is probably not the smartest person. They may be clever in some ways, but they don't have to be necessarily the smartest person. That might be someone who's running the machinery or inventing the new program, or that they don't have to be the smartest. Now, if you have no intelligence, low intelligence, obviously you're not going to be a very good school leader. So I'm not discounting the idea of intelligence. But they found that that wasn't the thing that was going to predict. They couldn't give an IQ test and say, we're going to get our leaders out of this pool of high IQs. So they came up with the idea, and Daniel Goleman, who you have an article by, and there's another one in your handout tonight, was one of the main proponents of emotional intelligence. So you'll see that listed as EQ instead of your IQ. And people with emotional intelligence are hard to pin down exactly what it is, but you know it when you see it. They've got with itness. They have the right stuff. When I was listening to the Pope talk this week, I'm like, he's got it. He understands. And it really doesn't matter what religion you're from or what nation you're a part of, whatever. He knows how to connect. And he knows how to do it so that people will follow. I don't have to give him a test. I know he has high emotional intelligence. And I know some of his predecessors haven't been as strong in that. They've been stronger in other things possibly. They may have been a better financial planner. They may have been a better long-range putting the pieces of the organization in place and sustainable succession planning or something else. But emotional intelligence is probably the thing that people need the most to keep the job, not to get it necessarily. People with low emotional intelligence can fake their way through the interview. But when they're in the trenches, they say the wrong thing, they do the wrong thing, they don't have the relationships, they have lack of self-awareness or a lack of social skills. But the good news is that this has been a very, very widely studied, I don't really want to call it a theory, a concept. And you could, if you just Google emotional intelligence, you will find everything from military applications to business to Mary Kay to, it's all in there. Everybody's talking about this emotional intelligence thing. And so, I want to go past this next. And so the defining of what it is comforting because we all have these things in some form. And the second thing is that the studies have found over time that you can raise your own emotional intelligence. You can't necessarily raise other people's emotional intelligence, which really bums me out because I'd like to go home tonight and say you're all much more emotionally intelligent than when you got here tonight. But if you want to, you can be. It's you that has to do your own. Other people don't. They can influence you, but they can't do it for you. So, basics of emotional intelligence. And I know a lot of you have heard of this in different places, but I want to have kind of a common language for us in this school leadership realm. The attitude that you have for things is really one of the big measures of what your emotional intelligence is. The idea is that things happen to us. We'll call them an event. We all are going to go out after class tonight and get in a car. We hopefully, that's our car. And but unfortunately, when we get out there tonight, somebody has keyed our car. I don't know why they chose everybody in our class, but they did. Okay? And so we're all standing out there looking at these keyed cars, and some people will kick the wheels of their car and get angry. Some people will call their insurance agent. Some people will cry. Some people will call somebody someone else will start taking pictures. We'll all have these different reactions to the exact same event. We all won't even have the same emotion from the event. Some of us will feel down and despaired, where others will feel like we want to get whoever did this to us, that you want to retaliate, that type of thing. All of those things that I'm talking about, all those emotions are honest and true, and if somebody's standing there crying, they need to cry, and somebody else is standing over there shouting, one of them isn't right or one of them isn't wrong, but then what? Then what? Stephen Covey says there's this moment between action and reaction that makes all the difference. Sometimes it's just a blink, but in that blink you decide, okay, I've had my emotion, I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm whatever those things are. Are you aware of that, and can you act on what you need to do to solve the situation, or are you going to continue to act on the emotion? Are you going to let the emotion control what's going on, or are you going to be able to use what you're feeling and continue to feel it. You're not going to be happy. Oh, yay, I got a big car bill, or, or I got to get my car fixed. Nobody's going to be happy with that. But some of us will get over it in a different way than others because of our own way of handling our own emotions and our ways of handling the outside world around us. So an emotionally intelligent person can handle their own emotions. It doesn't mean they don't have them. They get just as mad. They just but they just don't let the madness take over them. They get just as sad, but they just don't sit in the despair. They also don't call their sadness madness and their madness sadness. They know what they're feeling and can articulate what it is they're feeling and can manage it and use it to help them out of the situation. A lot of times what you can tell from your emotional intelligence is that little voice in your head that says, oh, you really shouldn't say that. Oh, I'm going to, and you're hearing this little voice saying, I can't believe I just, that voice that's talking that your mom called your conscience, is also your indication of your emotional intelligence at work. It's it's not the emotions, it's the voice that's managing it and saying, I shouldn't, oh, is that going to be embarrassing, should I, that kind of thing. So I'm going to go outside of emotional intelligence and talk about another theory here for a moment. This is not part of the actual theory of emotional intelligence itself. This is its own thing, but it really fits. And this talks about what we display and what we feel in our emotions. One of the things I remember being a first-year teacher was being absolutely surprised that there were times when I really, really wanted to laugh, that one of my sixth graders had done was so funny but so inappropriate, that what I really wanted to do was really just laugh out loud. And at that moment I got on my maddest face and shook my finger the hardest because that was inappropriate behavior and I could not support that by laughing. And I went down to the teacher's lounge and told her that. And the same thing was true on the day that I was really saddest, that I had had a death in my family. I wasn't showing that on my face at all, that I was acting like it was a normal day. I'm sure they knew it wasn't a normal day. I'm sure there were cracks of things that were coming through. But why did I not cry when I felt sad, and why did I not laugh when I felt happy? It's because I had a job to do. If I were home, I would have done those things. But there are times in our roles that we are required by the role to do certain things. The guy that says, have a nice day to you, or welcome to Walmart, probably isn't really hoping you have a nice day. But imagine if that person that you walk in the door and says, oh, it's you again, or, you're tracking mud in here, probably wouldn't have their job there very long. And so that emotional labor is expressing that what I was experiencing as that first year teacher. We all do, but we all learn. First year everything's a shock, so you remember those things. It's expressing one thing and feeling another. And I bet you if you think back in the last week, you could think of a time when you felt one way and emotionally you showed something else. That you were unhappy and you showed happy, that you were frustrated and you didn't let other people know. Okay? Being aware of that's important. Being aware, now I'm not saying that it's wrong to do it or right to do it. I mean, there's times when you have to do it. When you're in a crisis at school, you better not be the person that's standing on the chair saying, the world's coming to an end. You'd better be displaying what you want them to display, or you're going to get a reflection of you. There are some very valid reasons that you don't display what you really feel. So, I'm giving you a moment to think about sometime, and it doesn't have to be in the last week. I went clear back to my first year of teaching. But now you're going to just go to someone within shouting distance of you, and tell them that story. But you only get less than a minute to tell them the story. What they're trying to get is, why was it necessary? It might be obvious. And did holding in that emotion that you were really feeling create any other emotion in you? Okay? So you only get 2 minutes. So one belongs to the person that's sitting the closest to the door. And then I'll say switch, and then the other person gets a minute. Okay? So there you go. Find that person, that make eye contact so you know who it is. You got 1 minute, person closest to the door. You're going to tell us about a time when you experienced emotional labor. Go.
Do you want to go?
Okay. I would have to say I have a student this year that just finds everything they can to get the kids to laugh. And even some of the things they say, they're funny. And it's hard not to laugh, so I have to tell them. And then put my head up and be like, now is not the right time to do. So usually on a daily basis, I'm happy to do this.
The first time.
Because they're not following expectations. Oh yeah, I think of that because I'm my role as a teacher. Pulling my hair out, but yeah. You got 6 teachers watching your room and you're like, I know. Like you have to smile, like, don't scream, but they're fine. My students will say something very inappropriate, you know, and I want to laugh, but, you know, I can't. I've had teachers like that.
I'd like an administrative job. I really like an administrative
Now that, first thing I always notice when I do this is nobody has to stop very long to think of the story. Nobody sits there and goes, well, that doesn't happen to me. We always have the story. In fact, we probably could go on for the rest of the evening tonight and tell stories one after another about this. Why is this so memorable to us? And the next most important question is the one that's up there, is how often do you feel that way? Because when you're feeling one way and acting another, there is a distress in that. If you are constantly acting happy but you're not, you're bottling those feelings up. Now, of course, when my student was misbehaving and I was laughing, I was also concerned that I was going to have someone that was going to create distractions and disruptions in my classroom. What are the other students going to think? What if somebody came in and saw this? Those types of things. So it wasn't all, it was funny, but there was a reason that I was grappling with that two kinds of emotion. And if you continually have that going on in your life and you're not doing anything about it, it's corrosive. It eats at you. It bothers you more and more as time goes along. So having an awareness of it, so that you're doing it purposefully, okay, I feel really sad, but I'm not going to let other people know because that's the way it's going to get me through this day. At least having that awareness of that, having that control and knowing that I'm controlling these two different emotions, what I'm seeing, what I'm feeling, and what others are seeing is what I meant to say, does keep you out of the victim role. We're going to talk about victim roles a couple times tonight. It keeps you, that you're at an awareness level that you can say, I can do more or less of this as I choose. But if it's a constant way of life, it's not a very good constant way of life. And it's not a healthy way of life. Which leads to the next thought, which is the idea of consonant dissonance. Okay, music teachers, what's dissonance?
Where there's minor and major chords.
Yeah, that it sounds terrible, doesn't it? It's like if you went over to the piano and just went like this with your hands, like that, that's dissonance, right? Consonance, so you'd be playing a chord or something like that, or a scale that you'd hear something that sounded good to you. Okay, dissonance, okay. Cognitive, okay, teachers, what's cognitive? Thinking, right? Okay. So in other words, it's a brainstorm, but it's not like brainstorming ideas, is it? It's having ideas that are in conflict with one another. We also have this going on, which is different than felt and displayed emotions. This is having two different values or two different ideas or two different attitudes or two different behaviors that you're supposed to be doing at the same time. And you can't do them both, and you can't clone yourself or split yourself in half. There are many people feeling this right now. They have a strong belief that education is important and lifelong learning is something that is important in their lives. You're here. Okay? That's one thing that they believe in. They also believe that being a parent means being there for your kids. And your kids are home and you're here. So you got two emotions, two attitudes, two values that are both good, both positive in pieces of your life. And you can't do them both at the same time. That also causes stress for you. And we constantly have to deal with that. I have people that start into this program who say, I've got parent-teacher conferences and I've got class, and I'm like, which one are you getting paid to do? Which, what kind of leadership program would this be to say, don't do your job, come here, So we try to keep the cognitive dissonance away, but still you're like, okay, but I'm at conferences and I'm missing all that great stuff she's saying. Okay, maybe you're not saying that either. But cognitive dissonance is where two things collide, and there are certain ways that you handle that, and that's what the rest of this slide is. The rest of the slide is talking about how do you handle when you've got two things that are in conflict. You need to do them both. You believe in both of them. They're both important values to you, but you can't, if you do one, you can't do the other. Those types of things. One is that if you have an attitude and a behavior, it's easier to stop which one? Is it easier to stop the behavior or the attitude? This is what I believe and this is what I do. Should I change what I believe or should I change what I do? Most people say that I'll change what I do and stand by what I believe. But in reality, most people rationalize what I'm doing is the right thing and change their attitude. Because it's easier to change it. I keep doing what I'm doing. I know that I shouldn't be eating the third piece of chocolate cake. I know that. But it's my birthday. Month. And so, but you can do this, you can do it for good causes as well. I mean, you can say, for example, first thing I said about the parent being here, I believe in lifelong learning. I believe I should be there for my child, but one of the ways I can be there for my child is to be a good role model in education. I'm here. And they're home making the mac and cheese, but at least they know that I'm doing this for education's purposes and modeling what I want them to do. Another thing that you can do besides stopping the behavior, okay, I'm not going to eat the third piece of chocolate cake, is you can decide that the behavior is not important. I've been dieting all week. So that one extra piece of cake is not going to be very important. And I'll diet all, but people mostly say, I'll diet all next week, right? I'll do an extra hour at the gym, that type of thing. Or you can do what I said about saying, you know what, I'm going to look for the pieces that work. I have to be here, I should be at home, but you know what? Me being here is also going to teach them something at home about what you should do in life. Kind of. Now, some of this rationalization is perfectly good, and some of it's kind of faulty, like, why am I thinking about a third piece of chocolate cake? I can't think of any positive to that besides it tastes good, and I'm going to do it because it tastes good. That's a rational answer. I'm doing it because it tastes good. Why I'm bringing this to you is an emotionally intelligent person is aware when these things are going on. They know I'm rational. Okay, I'm going to eat this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to go to class, I'm going to do whatever those things are, but I'm aware that the reason that I'm kind of out of sorts about things is because I'm in this dissonance. There's two things that I both believe in, and I can't do them both. And so you think about, should I change my attitude or should I change my behavior? And you think, and you're upfront and aware of those things. So in your tonight's handout, you're going to see this filled out for you. About halfway back on the left-hand side, if I remember. But you know what? I haven't looked at this one for. It's after my PowerPoint slides, and it's talking about EI and performance. Goldman originally, in the article that I gave you, had 5 different parts to emotional intelligence. He's kind of moved to 4, and these are the 4. Everything in this class ends up in 4 boxes. I don't know why. But anyway, the first box at the top, on the left, is self-awareness. You can see both of the left-hand side are self. The bottom side is where he's put 2 things together. He used to talk about self-motivation and self-regulation, and he kind of has stuck those 2 things together. In other words, I'm gonna know about it, and I'm gonna act on it. Others, the awareness of others is I have some empathy. I know what others are feeling and thinking. I have a sense of that. I can be wrong, but if I'm not sure, I know enough to ask and clarify, to know what others are feeling and thinking. And then at the bottom is social skills. That is the actions that you take with others to influence their behavior. So those are the 4 quadrants now that make up emotional intelligence. And I'm going to spend a few minutes just going through a little bit deeper what those 4 quadrants are all about. First one's self-awareness, and that's a lot of what I've talked about so far tonight. Do I know what I'm feeling? Do I know why I'm saying what I'm saying? Am I fooling myself? Am I saying I think I'm doing this because I'm smart, but what I'm really doing is trying to make no one else really know how not smart I really am? Am I honest with myself? Do I spend any time thinking about my thinking? Do I spend any time thinking about my beliefs and my values? Why I do what I do? That's self-awareness. And it's neutral. It isn't a blaming thing. It isn't like, oh, you ate the 3rd piece of cake, you blew your whole diet, I'm off that forever. It's neutral. Okay, you ate the 3rd piece of cake, you've got some cleanup that you've got to do in your life to make up for that now, and you don't give yourself any slack and say tomorrow's somebody else's birthday, so I get to eat the cake again. You hold yourself responsible. But it's being aware of what's going on emotionally with you. The problem with this is the people that are good at it really know it. The people that are horrible at it don't have a clue. The people that are horrible at it also think they're really good at it. So if you think you're really good at it, you're either really good at it or you're really bad. So you need to think, before you settle on this. Give you an example. Dilbert. Cow supervisor has no self-awareness. I overcame a lot of bias against cows to get this job. People think that a cow with strong leadership skills is just a jerk. Is that what you think, Baldy? Huh? Do you? I'll say no. They think that their faults that we see are their strengths. I'm aggressive, I'm assertive, I'm powerful, not I'm bossy, okay? They rename those things. And by the way, we're going to talk about later tonight. We always name the things for ourselves in a more positive form than we do for others. But just be aware and don't just say, oh, yes, I'm a real self-aware person. I think this again is not part of the actual framework of emotional intelligence, but this is the continuum of emotions. I went on the internet and I just typed in the images, happy. And I found pictures, and I stuck one of them up there. And I found a picture that was labeled surprise, fear, sadness, anger, and disgust. Let's see if we can figure out which person was labeled each one of those things. Can you find the happy person? Man or woman? The woman and the top row in the center. Not too tough. Okay, can we find the person who looks surprised? Guy in the bottom. All right. Let's go to sad. Can we find which person's sad? I heard some that were saying this girl over here, and I heard some that were saying the guy, little boy over here. One say more sad to you than the other? The one that was on the internet was the little boy. But do you see how all of a sudden we're starting to go, ooh, this kid might be sad down here. I'm not reading it as easily. Sad? Not so much. What do you suppose that person was? Anger. Okay, so we got anger set. Okay, so who's disgusted?
Top left.
The lady in the red. But we thought she might be sad. Who then is left to be fearful? The child in the bottom here looking at the swimming pool was the fearful one. And why we did that was you could see some things, by the way, there are people that have real trouble reading that type of thing. I mean, and there's people that ignore a lot of the cues and clues that we have that actually don't have any kind of true identifiable thing, but they don't pay enough attention to it. So again, when we're starting now to think about when I'm looking at them, I'm no longer being self-aware, am I? When I'm looking at them, now I'm starting to go into that empathy part where I'm trying to read others' feelings and emotions. Okay? What the continuum says is, and this is true of yourself too, that's why I put it in self-awareness. The closer the two things are on the continuum, the more likely we are to confuse them. We don't confuse somebody from being happy to angry. We don't confuse those two feelings. But we do confuse surprise and fear. Think how close those two things can be. If somebody slammed the door right now, you would jump, and some people would say, I was surprised, and others would say, that scared me. Close together. Anger and disgust. Sadness and anger. Very often, people will say to you, I am so sad about this. And when you really peel back what they're feeling, they're angry. But it's not right to say I'm angry. Something's been taken away from me, I'll say I'm sad, where inside I may feel the loss as an anger, but it's not right for me to express anger, so I express sadness. So we need to know when we're seeing someone who's in one of these feeling one of these feelings of fear, it might really be the fear is not really as much fear as it is sadness, or when they say they're surprised, are they happy surprised or are they fearful surprised? Where are they on the continuum? Where are you yourself? Being able to read yourself and not lie to yourself of what that emotion is self-awareness. Self-awareness is not being self-conscious all the time. I can't say anything because I'm thinking so much about what I'm thinking that it just, stops me from saying anything or doing anything. It's not being overly self-analytical. Why did you do that? Why? It's not blaming. I had a student once that every time she made a mistake, she would punish herself by writing, I'm stupid, say, I made a mistake, so I write, I'm dumb, she would, and I forced her to change the sentence. Said, you can do that, but the sentence needs to be, I'll do better next time, I'll do better next time, I'll do better next time. Then you've got to have a different self-talk inside of you saying, it will be okay. Those types of things instead of, and so we worked out it. Because if I just tried to stop her writing, she would just wait until she get home or something like that and continue to do the same thing. But if I could take the same behavior and say, okay, use that to have the self-talk that's going to make you be better next time, so that you don't have that mistake, you don't have to worry about that again, then I'm not being self-critical, I'm helping to coach myself. So self-awareness is acknowledging strengths and weaknesses without being judgment, without judging yourself. So you have a paper coming up next where you have to write about your strengths, and I usually get this paper and say, here's my strengths in leadership. I'm outgoing, I'm organized, I'm friendly, and here's my weaknesses. I'm kind of a loner sometimes, well, guess what? You can't build on weaknesses. And you can't fix weaknesses. That's that same story, if you haven't read the story about where they take all the animals to school and they make the ducks learn how to climb and they make the fish learn how to fly and so forth. Everybody can't be everything. But you take your strengths and use those to compensate for those things that you're not as good at. Important word, test word, by the way, in this program is equifinality. We start off in our preschool trying to figure out what's the right answer, right? Is it red or blue, left or right, 6 or 7? What's the right answer? In leadership, there are many right ways. In fact, there is no one right way. The analogy is the sports analogy. There's a reason I have the goalpost up there. If the goal, coach, is to get a touchdown, do you get any better points that if you passed for the touchdown or if you ran for the touchdown? No. If you got a good passer, you better pass. If you got a great runner, you better run. Unless, of course, you want the element of surprise, and then you do the opposite thing.
Or the Seahawks.
Or there. Well, we're not even going there. Anyway, so there is no one right way. If we were in the same exact situation, we are both an assistant principal in a school, and the same thing happens, you might get up in front of the faculty and make a joke and get the tension all to go away. I could get up and tell the exact same joke and make them all hate me. Because I'm not a great joke teller. That's not how I do it. I would get up and tell them a very sincere, heartfelt story. You know that. I do that all the time. That's what I do, because that's my strength. I'm not going to tell a bunch of jokes. But on the other hand, you might get up and tell that same heartfelt story, and they're like, "Where's she coming from? That's you know, that's what your strength is." So there is no one right way of doing things. And by the way, everything we're going to do in here really comes back to decision making. You know, making choices. And so the question becomes, how do you know which one? If there isn't one right way, is there some wrong ways? Well, yeah, there's some wrong ways. Okay, you're going to get up and tell jokes. I'm going to get up and tell the warm, heartfelt story. The person that comes in and says, you're all going to get fired if you do, you know, I'm probably not going to have a high morale after that. You know, there's wrong ways to do things. But equifinality doesn't say there isn't wrong ways. It says there's more than one right way, and you got to find the way that works for the situation and for yourself, for your strengths, for the history of the organization, of what's gone on before. All those things play into this. That's the judgment call. What's the right thing to do in this situation? Should I tell a joke now? You know, should I ask for people to ask questions now? What should I do now? That's the judgment call. It happens all the time. How do you be good at making the judgment call? Well, you do your homework. Same thing the teacher says. Do your homework. In this case, the homework is, do you know what the laws are? Do you know what the culture is around there? Do you know what's been tried before? Do you know what the relationships are between the people that are there? Do you know what your strengths are? Do you know these things? Those are your homework. That's why you're here, is doing that homework of learning yourself, learning the situations, so that when you come to that judgment call, you aren't doing it out of panic or doing what we always did before, but you're doing it out of your strengths of the organization, the strengths of yourself, and you're putting those things together, and you have a higher chance of scoring the touchdown. So equifinality works in a lot of cases, and we'll be talking about that till the very last day we're together, and hopefully that's one of the things that you're thinking of a year, 2 years, and 5 years from now, when you say, I don't have to be him. I don't have to do what the person did before. I don't have to do what the person in the next school's doing. I have to do what's right for our group, for our place, for this time, for me. All of those things have got to be playing together. Okay. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about self-responsibility. I'm going to show the marshmallow test. Who knows the marshmallow test? All right, you're going to get to see the marshmallow test, because we're going to talk about it with self-responsibility in 6 minutes. I will take papers and anything that you're handing in, don't bring it to me, put it into your folder. If you have questions about papers and so forth, I will be here to talk, though. 6 minutes. That's not it. Well, where do you suppose it went? Marshmallow test. There you are. That survey that's in there for that, and that's being piloted by one of our doctoral candidates. Otherwise, I just started on with emotional intelligence. That's what I'm
I was able to double dip, like I'm taking the 410 now, and I see it's going to be elective to do class or no?
Why that's there is because 8410, if you're taking that, then the one that's open for you is 8400.
Okay, so I have to choose two that I'm not taking.
Yes, and it doesn't have to be these. You could take an early childhood class or a SPED class, or
I know
or
one
one
that I
of
do
these
want to take. That
classes.
one for sure.
That's a
And
great
maybe I'll
class.
take this too.
That's a good one too.
Okay.
And And this one's new this spring too, if you wanna know more about SPED as well. So that's gonna be taught for the first time this spring, so all of those would be great options.
Did you say that the intro to research was gonna be doing some research?
No, I don't, but.
Intro to research should not be changing in the next year. Eventually, I believe it will have a, different textbook, that type of thing.
Thank you.
My colleagues were all very jealous that I got to come sit in election after Mars on election.
Well, that was sarcastic.
No, it was great.
Remember, we're here, so.
Oh, yeah, that's right. If the 12 credits that could go towards doctorate would mean that I would have to get an endorsement for this program, correct? And
Yes.
masters.
Right,
Okay.
because you already have a master's.
Yeah. And so I had my credits rolling into
Mhm.
this program.
Mhm.
Okay. And for capstone, it said it gives you 24 credits completed. Would that include the 9
Mhm.
transfers?
Mhm.
Okay. And let's see what else is there.
We just want you to be close enough to the end because the capstone,
Mhm.
if you haven't created the stuff and you have to create it for capstone, it's kind of
Yeah, I was looking at
beyond its purpose.
when to do it.
We do it every
Because I'm
semester,
trying to figure out if I want to pack my summer or not.
but
pack the
remember, it
summer.
only meets 3 times.
Yeah.
So it isn't like, and the thing is, if you're gonna do it this summer, you can get the materials and start putting your portfolio together in advance. And so that
Yeah.
piece of it's,
I have everything printed out. I haven't looked to see
So
what
it
I've
would-
done so far. Would go.
it wouldn't be terribly packed to do it on top of things in the summer. People last year did not have
Any issues with that?
Since I'm taking this one, so I'll take that one subject class. So then it's open to competition. And she said that this fund is going to be
do it
this spring.
then
And this
email
is
it to me. I will take it out, put those edits, and it's just like the place where it kind of needs to be, the frontals and where it's supposed to be. I just wanted you to be aware of it. I didn't want you to have to work on it anymore.
Okay, I see.
But I just wanted you to know that there's some little bitty things that if you were gonna turn it in into your final portfolio or something, you want to fix. And I can do that.
I can read it again, I'm just like, how do I see the edits?
I
So that's
just,
why.
I wasn't, they weren't even big enough for me to.
Right, okay. The other thing is, you would say some, at the beginning of class, about making sure that,
You don't have any organization on there.
so how do I get?
Time must be it. Again, send me an email and I'll forward it on to the person that's doing it and I'll get your email, get your lunch. Yes, I saw it was on there, I haven't got back to those yet.
Marshmallow test to see what would happen and what parents could learn about teaching our children self-control.
Okay, why does that up there show that?
I'm gonna give you this topic.
Alright. Why is it not showing on the screen? Wasn't it mirroring on? I need to turn on the mirroring some way and I can't remember what I do to do that. I used to have a little screen up here that I did it.
Preferences will work.
Oh, for mirroring,
The
you
Apple
have to go up to
preferences.
the Apple
Yeah.
and then preferences.
System pref.
Why am I not seeing any? System preferences.
And then you hit display.
I never really have to learn everything because somebody in the room always
This is the
knows.
most frequently asked question I get in school. So I do this often.
Show mirroring options.
And then I think up at the top, there's an option, I can't see.
arrangement, I think. And then check the box, mirror displays.
Yeah, and then you.
But thank you all. All right. I think if I could be in charge of the world, and I could get us to teach our children one thing by teaching ourselves first, it would be to delay gratification. Because many, many of the world problems that I've seen come from a lack of being able to wait for the reward. I mean, that's where the national debt comes in. We have to buy today and pay for it tomorrow. That's where I want what I don't really want to wait for things. They have made all kinds of connections with delaying gratification to success in life. I don't know. I mean, if I'm looking for things, I can find them. So I can't tell you that I totally buy everything that they say in there. And what I do tell you is, if you do have a little one at home, don't run home and hand them a marshmallow and see what happens. It'll just drive you crazy. Don't do that. But do teach them to wait for things, to wait for the reward, because that's something we can all be better at as well. My 3 pieces of cake, if I'd have put some in the freezer, and when I lost so much weight, I got to have it. Now that extra piece of cake, what in the world? I think it must be this wanting to talk to us. So we'll see the marshmallow test.
Chip, and you can eat it anytime you want. But if you don't eat it and you wait for 5 minutes, then you can have what's inside of this box. Okay? So we're going to go upstairs and we're going to wait for 5 minutes and then we're going to come back out. So you just stay there.
Do I get a blue bow? I like pink bows. I think it's because this one is more fragile. And you get that one because it's really pretty inside.
And I don't want to give up mine, so I'm going to tell you why yours is better.
Oh.
Can you predict by their behaviors who's going to end up eating it? Actually, they can somewhat. They can that girl right now is less likely to eat it than the boy that ate it a little while ago. How do I know that? She's not looking at it. The other child was like zeroed in and focused on the candy. And all of a sudden it was gone, and then it was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? You know? But children that are able to do this, and there's dozens of these online. They're fun to watch. Watch that instead of cat videos the next time. They have displacement. Instead of looking at the piece of candy or the marshmallow or whatever it is, they'll sing a song to themselves. They'll turn sideways and look other. Some of them are actually looking at the big present and spending all their time thinking about the bow and the present, those types of things. All those types of things helps them to displace that want of that piece of candy there. The ones that focus on the little piece of candy cannot see that there's something worthy in the box there. And by the way, there's something else about trust about that they have to trust that adult is really going to have something nicer in that box. If there's no trust for the adult, then it all goes away. I'm going to eat that candy right now because it's there and I've got it, and I don't know, that box may have a piece of coal inside of it. So there's a piece in this that plays with trust as well. It isn't all about self-responsibility, but it speaks to me a lot to the instant access I can't stand it when my computer, the little thing's spinning around and around, and maybe 15 seconds and I can't stand it. I used to sit and watch pictures on my computer, and when I had dial-up, come in, take me, forever to get one picture to come in, and now I can't stand it. The computer got better, but my patience got worse. Self-responsibility is using the self-control to delay the gratification, to wait for the bigger prize, to look down the road and figure out what it is the big goal that you really want, not just the today. Now again, if you're a Maslow and you're in survival mode, having enough to eat today is more important than having enough to eat next Saturday. But you inspire your own motivation, just like the little girl that was looking off into space, or whatever those other things they were doing, or looking at how pretty the bow was on the box. You figure out how to motivate yourself to do the thing that is less pleasant at this time, and you don't blame others. Those two little girls, one of them ate it, the other one would say, she told me to, right? You knew that was coming. She said to eat it, right? Self-responsibility is whether I eat the marshmallow or not is up to me. Whether somebody tells me to do it or not is not the issue. Social, that's that bottom one. What are the skills that you need to be able to work with others? The ones that they've shown in emotional intelligence that matter are being flexible. The computer doesn't work, so you write on the board or make shadow puppets or whatever, whatever those things are that you're flexible. You can't do it today, so how are you going to change your plans to make it work for you? Empathetic doesn't say sympathetic. Now, I've had this discussion with one of our doctorate candidates that there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. And if you use them interchangeably, it's okay as long as you just realize there's a difference between the two things. If you're walking along the street and you see a very sad person down in a hole and they can't get themselves out of the hole, if you're empathetic, you look at the hole, you look at the situation, you reach down into the hole and you help them out of the hole. I realize your situation's bad. I realize that you're having a problem. I feel something for that. I don't just continue to walk on by. I feel something for that. But I am not going to be sympathetic. Sympathetic, I jump down in the hole with you so I can experience that too. And we can cry together. Say, what? People do that. sympathy is you go to a memorial service and you cry even though you don't know the person. Out of sympathy, you're feeling what they're feeling. You're not necessarily, if you don't know the person, you're probably not crying because you're going to miss that person, but you're missing somebody else in your life, and you're thinking back to that, and you're feeling sympathy. You're resonating with that feeling, and you're feeling it too. But you got to stay, again, in the balcony. You got to stay out of the hole to help get that person out of it. So empathy is, I recognize what you're feeling. I can even feel, emotionally because of what I'm feeling for that, but I can't just wallow in it with you. Because sympathy, that's when people get over a cup of coffee and they each tell the story, and the next one's worse, and the next, well, my boyfriend did this. Well, guess what? My boyfriend did that, and that's a sympathy cycle. You're in the hole and you're just wallowing in it together, instead of saying, let me listen to your story about your boyfriend. I'm not going to tell you my story. You're not asking me to tell you a worse story. You're asking me to listen to you and recognize what you're going through. And sometimes that's all the hand they need out of the hole. They don't need you to solve the problem for them. So how do you get more emotionally intelligent? You focus on changing yourself. You can control yourself. You can influence others. Remember those two self? Self-awareness, self-regulation. You can control whether you're going to eat the marshmallow or not. You cannot control whether somebody else is going to. But you can influence them. You can influence them by what you say to them, by how pretty bow you put on things, all those things you can influence. But you cannot actually control it. However, you do realize that in the social sphere, whenever you got more than two people, even when you have two, but generally when you have more than two, you're going to have some issues because of miscommunication and conflict. Everybody doesn't want the same thing at the same time. There isn't a window seat for everybody. And so being better at those types of skills is a good strengthening of your emotional intelligence. Most of us have great emotional intelligence when times are good. The rest of the night I'm going to talk about when times are bad. It's a very little time part in our life, please understand that, but you don't need me to help you figure out how to do the good times. Yes, go home and do them, right? You go to work tomorrow and do the good times. You want some help on the bad times. So that's what I want to talk about the rest of tonight with. I'll also talk about the test, which isn't really probably too good a time either. But so it's all going downhill from here, everybody. But don't worry, I'm empathetic. I'll help you out the hole. So here we go. Attribution theory talks about where do you attribute, or where do you put the responsibility for what's going on. And there are two mistakes that we make when we try to look, okay, there's the hole, there's the problem. You're in the hole down there, person. And I'm standing here, who do I put the blame on? Is the blame on you for being so stupid to get into this hole that you can't get out of? Or is the blame my fault because I haven't figured a way out to help you out of the hole, because actually I'm not in the hole, I'm the one that should be able to fix out and figure out some kind of problem that's going on. Generally, when we think the problem is them, you heard me say, you were down in the hole, how stupid it was of you to fall down in the hole. Generally, the fundamental attribution error, the basic error we make in putting the responsibility is that we assume that other people can control themselves. In other words, you should have been smart enough not to land in that hole. It's your fault, there's something the matter with you. Now, change the story around. I'm in the hole, you're standing out there, and I'm looking up at you out of the hole, and you're saying, how did you get in this situation? I probably am not going to say, I was really stupid. Boy, was I stupid. How could I possibly have done I'm going to do some self-serving bias. The sun was in my eyes. Nobody could have seen that hole coming. I had so many other things to do that my arms were just filled with all the other things I had to do, and of course I missed it. In other words, self-serving bias says when I think I'm having the problem is me. The reason for it is everything around me. How do you fix those things? You turn them on their heads. Jim Collins, the guy that wrote Good to Great, talks about the window and the mirror. And what he says with great leaders is that when things are bad, they look in the mirror and say, what can I do to make this problem better? Can I put up a sunshade so the sun isn't in there? Can I put a sign saying, watch out, there's a hole in the sidewalk? What can I do to make this situation better? Because I can only control me. What a poor leader does is they look out the window when there's a problem. Oh, look what they're doing wrong. Look what they're doing wrong. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. I can't make them change. I can try to influence it, but I can't make them change. So a good leader, when times are good, do they look in the mirror? Oh, you're a great leader. Look how good things are because you're the great leader. When times are good, then they put that self away and say, look what we've accomplished. Look what they can do. Look what has happened. Look out the window. Poor leaders do it backwards. Times are bad. Times are good. Good leaders do it the opposite way. Times are bad, look to yourself. Times are good, give the credit. Like pearls before swine? Perfect example of fundamental attribution error. I think we're a dysfunctional duo. What should we do? Change. How? You change first. We'll see if it solves our problems. Well, what parts should I change? All the parts I don't like. Well, how will I know which parts those are? Fine. I'll make a list of all your faults and number them 1 to 10. What if that doesn't solve our problem? Well, then at least we can say we tried. But I'm the one who's tried. How can you say you tried? Number 1, argumentative. Do not be concerned for a test, whether it's self-serving bias or fundamental attribution error. People are always saying, I mix those two things up. I can't remember which turn is which. What you have to remember in both of them is both of them are placing the blame on the wrong set of circumstances. Self-serving means I'm going to serve myself. I'm going to make myself feel happy about it. It's not my fault. Something else happened. That's self-serving. Fundamental attribution is saying the kids didn't do it because they were lazy. The principal didn't do it because he doesn't know. Somebody else did it because of something within them. You don't give them the same, the sun was in their eyes break that you give to yourself. So what do we do with these people, like the cow earlier or the mouse now, that live through life thinking they know how to solve things, when really what it is they are absolutely backwards? and they are causing the issue, right? Well, there's a really good book that you really want to have, but you never ever want to have out on your desk. And it's called How to Deal with Difficult People, right? In big red letters. And I gave you how to deal with people you can't stand. There is also how to deal with difficult people. You could probably get away with that one. But dealing with people you can't stand. You do not want that laying on your desktop in parent-teacher conferences. But you probably want to have read it. If you haven't read it, I'm going to give you the Cliff's notes on it from Cousin Cliff. Anyway, good guy. Really sweet. I should make fun. He was really great. Anyway, this is the model that is developed in dealing with people you can't stand. Because there are the mouse, cow, unbelievably hard to deal with people in all of our lives. Hopefully they aren't looking at us from the mirror. But sometimes you have to step back and make sure it isn't you. And what can you change to be less of that type of person? But let me just spend a few minutes tonight. This is not a tested item. None of this model is, because life isn't a test. Life's a crisis. This model talks about why do people do what they do. Well, if you look in the center of this zone, there are 4 reasons why people do what they do. Okay, you can see it much better on your handout than you can see up there, even a little fuzzy. Okay? Normally, we do things because we want to get it right. And you feel good when you accomplish something when you get it right, don't you? We also just want to get it over with. I mean, I don't do laundry just to get a gold star, you know? I mean, I just want to get it done. To be appreciated and to get along. All of us could have a story right now of why we did something that would fit each one of those. But if you also thought of someone that you love, you could tell me which one of those is most important to them. So you're thinking this person that you love, why do they do the things they do? They like to be appreciated. Is that what makes them tick? Do they like to get along? What is it that zone is? We all kind of have a zone that we gravitate toward, one of those 4 things. And sometimes it depends. I'm this way at home, but I'm this way at work. I'm this way at school. Sometimes it changes. Again, self-awareness lets you know, where do you fall in this? I hope I fall in the normal zone. That's what I hope, because that's that middle thing. When you get to the next circle out, when you see it in the book, the center circle's green. That's where we want to be. The next circle that's shaded in your model is yellow. That says when you're under stress or when you're out of shape, where do you go? Someone who likes to get it right runs out to perfectionism. Things are stressful, they try to get it just exactly right. They get frustrated if they can't get it right. And sometimes they won't even start to do something because they might do it wrong. Okay, they're going out into yellow zone. People that like to be appreciated, when the times are going tough, they become the class clown, or they become the agitator, or they want to be noticed. That's the way they're going to deal with it. People that want to get along, do whatever to get the approval. They seek out of the other person what's going to get the approval from that person, and that's what they're going to do. Okay? People that want to get it done become very controlling. All right? There are 6 steps in this, and we're going to do it in this step, this order. We all go out there too, don't we? Somewhat, sometimes. We all go out into that yellow zones. Some of them are more common for us than others. But the very outside is the red zone. The red zone are people that go out there and never come back. They go out so far of getting it done that they're like, yes, I am all about getting it done. I'm all about getting it done, that I become a tank. I'm going to bulldoze over. It doesn't matter what you do or say. It's getting it done because I'm good at it. So these outside ring are the people that have issues that don't get solved by you or me. They are out there, and we have to work with our side of the equation because they aren't coming back to normal anytime soon. Doesn't mean they're abnormal. It means that they have found a way of coping with the world that works for them, and they're staying with it. Less likely have very much emotional intelligence, because these are more likely the people who say, I'm really a good speaker, and you say you're a know-it-all. Okay. So what do? Well, that's what's on your slide, or the bottom of your page. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But generally, on my slide up here, are some of the things that you do with dealing with difficult people. One is you learn strategies of dialogue. When do I talk? When do I listen? And when you're dealing with some of these people that are out on the perimeters, you've got to go out of your comfort zone, not what you normally do. You have to reflect what's going on with them. That's the response techniques. You increase your awareness, and you practice ahead of time so that you just start responding. You know that this person and that these people push your buttons. You got to have your buttons ready ahead of time so that they're harder to push. And the ultimate goal is to increase your interpersonal relation skills. That's why we have a whole class called Interpersonal Relations that some of you have taken and some of you will be taking. Because in this degree, we strongly believe that you can't just assume that people are going to be able to handle the tough times as easily as they handle the good times. When times get tough, they also go to that outer. And what you really don't want in a conversation is two people in the red zone. You got to have somebody that's in the green to be able to have some emotional detachment from this to make this have any kind of meaning at all. So let's talk about these difficult people. Okay. These are not my terms, this is the book terms. They call the people that are out there in the controlling area, they call them the rulers. I'm going to control. They call the people that are out there in the attention getting the entertainers. The relators are the people that are trying to get approval, and the analyzers are the ones who are the perfectionists. So that they are labeling things. But I have to tell you that one of the very few times that it's good to label something is when you can name it, you can deal with it. You know, to go around and say, my boss is a tank, isn't probably a real smart thing to do out loud. But in your head, if you can start to name that instead of just saying, I can't deal with him, he's driving me crazy, I don't know what to do. You know, it starts to take you out of the victim role and puts you in a place where you're saying, I'm going to try to control myself and influence what's going on. I can't control this other person. They're like this. So let's talk about reasoning, spotlighting, giving them some attention, diagnosing with them. Okay? And this is what's at the bottom of your page, so you don't have to write all this down. A tank is somebody who's going to be right no matter what. They interrupt you when you're talking. They're so busy they don't have time for you to explain things. They often are loud and pound on their desk and that type of my way or the highway type of person. If you're going to work with them and they are trying to bully you, a couple of things. When you're being bullied, it is the one time when you go back with a you. The word you, Y-O-U. In all of these other cases, it's easier to address these things by starting with an I. I feel that, I believe that, but with a bully, now, this tag says, I don't have time for things. So you go in, you get your plan ahead of time, you say, I know you like to get things done, and I like to get it done right. So here are the 5 things. Here's the 3 things. Here's the number 1 thing. Whatever that is, you're going to tell them it's concise, it's quick, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm aware that you like all that stuff, and so I'm going to mirror that reaction. With a tank, I am not going to sit down and put my head down and tell a long story and try to gain their respect. They aren't going to respect that. They're going to see that as wimpy washing. If they yell at you, you don't yell back. But you don't. People try to talk people down. They see that as ineffective work. So if you're talking here, I'm going to talk here. If I can get you to talk down to that level, then I'll walk you down step by step to kind of calm down and quiet down, get my voice a little slower and quieter. If you're standing, I'm standing. If you're leaning in, I'm leaning in. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be aggressive and look like I'm going to start a fight. But I'm not going to show submissiveness to this person. I want to command their respect. And I respect them. I know you like this. I have noticed that you do this. So this is what our group is going to do to fix that. Quick, clear, straightforward. Maybe people, now they're in a whole different quadrant when you look and see at your circle there. Maybe people want approval, right? And so they never tell you, where do you want to go for supper? Oh, I don't know. Well, how about Chinese? Well, not really. Well, how about the all-you-can-eat place? I'm not that hungry. Well, and then they just kind of like, you can't ever get them to commit to anything. Because if you commit, then you have to stay with it. If you just stay in maybe land, you don't really have to ever, make anybody mad at you. Nobody ever happy with you either, but nobody's mad at you. With a maybe person, you help the person to think decisively. You don't give them 16 flavors of ice cream to look at. You give them 2. And you can even say things like, I'm going to give you chocolate ice cream unless you tell me that you want vanilla. Now, if they say, well, maybe I don't. I've already told you, I'm going to give you chocolate ice cream unless you tell me you want vanilla. And I'm helping them make that decision. A little harder with boss, but you can do it there too. You can narrow the choices. You can help them figure out what their decision is. Snipers are probably one of the hardest of the group. Snipers are people that sit back in the room there, and as you're up here giving the presentation, says something under the breath, and all the people around laugh. And you know it wasn't appropriate. Usually they do it just loud enough so you can hear it too. So now you got the dilemma. Do I pretend I didn't hear it and go right on and act like, oh, I didn't hear what that comment was over there. I just lost. And the sniper just won. Because the sniper likes to live in the weeds and get you when you're weak. And then go back in the weeds and not be noticed that it was even then. You don't let a sniper hide. And it's so hard at first. It's so hard. I'm going to have a sniper right here because I know you never in this whole world do that. But you can handle it because it's not your style. All right, so he just said something inappropriate underneath his breath, just loud enough for me to know that he said something sexist. I mean, I can't believe he said that. Okay?
No, he's blushing.
He's blushing because the attention's on him, but I also always pick one of the strong people that I know can handle it. You turn to the person, and you repeat. You've got the guts. You say exactly that. I just heard you say whatever it is that you said. Even if it's repulsive. Even if it's racial. Even if it's hurtful to yourself. When you say whatever it is that you just said, mean by whatever you is just? Why am I saying back the repulsive thing to him over and over? Ever had a little child tell you a joke? Everybody laughs. What's a little child do? Tell you again. Everybody kind of. They tell the joke again. They tell it again. It's not funny. Repetition takes all the sting out of it, doesn't it? Okay, so I'm saying this thing back. Now, of course, if I'm working with students and they said something racial, I'm not going to say the racial word back at them or that type of thing. You can, talk to anybody in any code of conduct anywhere. You don't use language with children. But I'm talking adult to adult here. We're all in this meeting. And he said this thing, that whatever it is. Okay. Even though it wasn't him, I made him blush. Because I made the tension, he's not hiding anymore. And I took the sting out of the thing. And I asked him, what do you really mean by that? Very uncomfortable, isn't it? What do they usually say?
Nothing.
Nothing. You can't take a joke. Just kidding. Okay, so if they say you didn't mean anything, really nothing, so why would you say something like that? I'm not letting this thing go. He's never going to speak up in a meeting again. And not only that, somebody else that wants to start doing that knows it's not happening on my watch. But guess what? Every other person says, she's not going to let it happen to me either. And when they say, it was just a joke, keep on. Well, what is it about whatever it is you just said that's funny? I don't understand that whatever you just said is a joke. You're going to have to explain that one to me. Okay, nothing is more important than doing that at that time because you've just made an enemy. And you know that. They are going to walk out of here and say, love that class. Love that class. But I've already figured out that this is a sniper. This isn't somebody who's just saying a little comment to get some attention in class one time. This is somebody who's out for toxic stuff. And what we ignore is just as dangerous and just as corrosive they know you let it by. It's tough to do. You have to practice it. I even have to practice it to do it with people that aren't really doing it, because it's not my style to go and say, "I'm going to confront you right in front of everybody," because I don't know for sure. You know what? Oftentimes they do. They also switch to a tank at that time, and they bluff. They get bluff and rough, and then I go, I think you need to wait and discuss this with me because you're disturbing this class. You. And you back them. And you have to be willing to go where it goes. But again, we're talking about those very few difficult people. We're not talking about doing this on a weekly basis. Even with the person that's like this. You want to have them able to walk out with respect if you possibly can. Even though they say it was just a joke, you can let them off eventually. Once they've got the message, you're not going. You can let them off. Well, I'm glad you thought that was a joke. I know you're not the kind of person that would ever purposefully hurt my feelings or whatever those things are. You can walk yourself back out of it. I know that isn't what you intended to do tonight. I know you're having a bad day or whatever those things are. You can give them the positive reason that maybe that happened. But don't let them off the hook or they're coming back. Grenades are people that go along okay and all of a sudden blow up. The answer to do with that is to help them. They have a lack of that self-control. And so, again, you limit choices, you give an option, you take responsibility and step in what those things are, but you don't enable them to keep blowing up and keep blowing up. Once they're done blowing up, then you need to talk in a calm, you need to go to your fierce conversations, and in a calm time, talk about things about the relationship. Know-it-alls like to have people say that they know what they're talking about. So sometimes you have to listen a little bit. This is somebody you can interrupt, but when you interrupt them, you use their own words. Oh, so you mean but, and you repeat their words back to them. They just heard you were listening to me by repeating the words back. And I could stop hearing the rest of it because I just gave them what they needed. They needed, you're listening to me, what I'm saying is important. So when I interrupt them, I'm going to well, wow, you said this. I think they know-it-alls are ones that just don't have the knowledge, but they still act like it. And what Brinkman says in the book is that you can even take the bad idea that they're having and bridge it to your idea. Oh, you just said that, cows made out of butter are a great, food source or whatever they said. They think they know it all. That reminds me of an article that I read, and you go off on your other topic or whatever it was. Okay, I just repeated back to you that I heard your statement. I'm not should be pointing to you again. My goodness, you have to live with it already. I repeated back to you what your statement was. I said, because of what you said, it made me think of something else. And I go on my merry way. And I hijack the conversation. Whiners, you shift the focus to the future. They like to dwell on the past. It wasn't right. They done me wrong, this and that. So you try to get them, like my little student that was writing the blame things, you try to get them to the next time. Okay, what are we going to do next time so this doesn't happen? The no people that whatever you say, it's wrong. Whatever you say, it's wrong. Give them their good intent. You know what? Sometimes people that always try to find the wrong things, you can say, you know what? I appreciate that you always look for the pitfalls so that we don't fall into those errors early. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. And then you go, again, you are giving them the positive intent. In other words, you're not just dragging everything down. You're trying to avoid future mistakes. Yes, people agree with everything, and then they go back and do whatever they did. Yes, I'm going to clean up my room, and it doesn't get cleaned up. Okay. First of all, they do that because they're afraid of the consequence. Yes, I'm going to clean up my room. Gets mom out of my face for now, and I'll deal with the consequence later. It just kicks it down the road farther, and so they have to feel safe in being able to say no. They have to know what those consequences are. And so you have to also ensure their commitment. Okay, you said you're going to do that, then you're going to do that by when? And how will I know it's done? You're going to come and tell me that you did it by, you work through the hows and whens of that. Nothing people, don't do anything. Again, you lighten up, you make a joke out of that they're not giving you any feedback, they're not giving anything for you. And so if they don't give you anything, you got this kid, you say, what do you want, or what do you do? They're sitting here. There's always this kid in the office who won't say anything, won't do anything, right? They just won't give you anything. So I guess that you're probably hungry right now. And, and I start to put words in their mouth. If they can't stand it, then they start to say, no, that's wrong, and then that kind of thing with it. If I guess right, they're like, hey, she understands what I'm talking about. I can't lose. Because guess what? I'm going to guess stuff that I want to have happen. And if they don't say anything, it's going to be my way. So, great book. Has a lot more techniques than that. But if you got one of these, you got to practice it. You put it, I had a tank. I worked for a tank. I put the things that I was going to do in little code on my desk, and I would see it all the time so that I would practice it mentally. I went back in my past. But here's some good tips. Don't try to fight every battle. Just fight the ones that are worth it. Aim for a positive direction. It doesn't do any good to tear the other person down. You're just a tank, and I'm just going to make you feel as miserable as you make me feel. No. We want things to be better. Post your goals. That's what I told you. I had them written in a little code to myself to remind myself the things I was going to do. Try not to be the victim. Try to think of the ways that you can influence what's going on. Because even if it doesn't work, look at number 9, you appreciate yourself. You're getting better at emotional intelligence. they're horrible to work with, but you're cutting your skills on this really, really tough people, so all the other people in your life are going to be better because of it. And you got to believe that it's possible. You got to keep you give the positive intent with what's going on. Again, great source. There's other ones out there like dealing with difficult people, those types of things. They're all good sources. One that I use with kids is called No More Nagging, Nitpicking, and Nudging. And it gives short techniques to work with those difficult kids so that you're continually having to remind, continually having to nag, those kinds of things. And another one that I always recommend when I teach interpersonal is a book called Tongue, like in your mouth, Tongue Fu, F-U. Tongue Fu for schools talks about how to say it. You can say the exact same thing, and in some ways, you're more likely to get people to go along with you. For example, I was in a meeting last night, and at the meeting, we were going to set up some guidelines, and the people in there were saying, we're going to say, if you don't turn your paper in by this time, you can't, whatever. And well, you say, those that turn their paper in on time get this. Instead of being punitive, I put the same boundary, but I learned that in Tongue Fu. So it's another. So those are good ones. Go to the half-price bookstore. They're there every once in a while, and get it cheap. But they're the kinds of things that help you raise your own emotional intelligence, because it's something we all can do, no matter how good we are at things. I'm always the one now. I've read all the Tongue Fus and all those things, and then I do it wrong and go, I should have said it the other way. I did it backwards, But at least I feel, then I say, I appreciate myself. At least I realized I did it wrong, and I won't do it so wrong next time. I haven't got to that last part yet, but I'm getting there. I'm working on it. In the time that we have left, I want to talk to you about the test that's going to arrive at the midpoint of class next week. The bad news is I'm an evil test writer, because I don't think giving out a test that you don't have to do any effort for, and you still get 100%, teaches you anything or is worth your effort. What theory am I talking about when I'm saying I don't? It was in motivation. I said, I'm not going to give you such a simple test you're all going to get 100% without even trying. We're talking about, I know you did it late Sunday night, but think about it anyway. Blocks, goal setting theory. I don't want to give you a test that's so simple that when you get 100% you go, oh, well, so what, everybody else did too. No big deal. I also don't want to give you one that's so hard that it's like my nephew started it in pre-med this semester, and he's in a class where he got 80%, and he doesn't have any idea whether that's an A or C because they're going to grade it on the curve at the end of the semester. I'm not doing that either. But I'm testing for some specific reasons. One is, in this era of assessment, it's good to go back and realize what it's like to sweat it. It's too easy to say the fundamental attribution error. Those kids aren't doing well on the test. It's their fault. Okay? It's good to put yourself down in the hole and say, remember what it's like to have to study hard. Secondly, you're already starting to say, I'm seeing some of this motivation stuff. I'm seeing it on television. I'm seeing it in the hallways. I'm seeing it in my classrooms. I'm seeing it places. I want it to come. I don't want you to have to go run back to the book. I don't care whether you remember Locke's goal-setting theory. But when I said that about having such a low goal, I want to have some kind of awareness that, you know what, there's some kind of theory behind this thing. It isn't just common sense stuff. It's got some analyzed, proven theory behind what it is we're doing. So, the first part of the test is matching. I'm putting down all the different concepts and theories and so forth. And you say, what concepts and theories? I've got them for you, don't worry. I've got them. You've got them. You've got them in your notes. You've got them in the videos from the class. You've got them in the handouts. They're all there. Everything's fair game. But I'm not looking for the little stuff. I'm looking for the heart of the matter. So the first part, it doesn't say like Herzberg over here. And, well, it does say that. Let me say that.
I want to read that.
It says this is the way it says. It'll say Herzberg's two-factor theory. And on the other side of the matching, it will say hygiene factors and motivators. So in other words, you see, or it will say emotional intelligence on this side. And it might even say Goleman's emotional intelligence, because I don't want you to memorize a bunch of names. On this side, it will say things like self-awareness, empathy, social skills, okay? So you don't have to sit there and go, okay, what are the 4 kinds of... French and Raven's power is going to have what on the other side of it?
The center of the hand.
Yeah. Oh. Reward. Punishment is coercion. Legitimate. Expert and reference. Until I do it out of my sin, you know. I learned it that way. Legitimate power, expert power, referent power, coercive power, reward power. You'll remember it next week too. Anyway.
What was the French and Raven?
French and Raven's 5 kinds of power. That was out of the first night. If all this stuff is like nowhere for you, you've got some work to do. And so there's a couple places on that are helpful to you for this. Here's tonight's page. By the way, there's Daniel Goleman talking about that. And here's a guy that talks about 6 seconds in emotional intelligence. I thought he was interesting. Down here are some notes. This is a little game I used to play. You can play it if you want to, but the links don't work as well as anymore. Along the way, I had some students study for the test, and the other students liked what they did well enough that they let me keep it. And so I have an electronic flash card that you can play games with it. I didn't do this. A student did it. So if it doesn't say exactly what I said, this is what the student interpreted. Okay? You can go in there and play the games to help you with the matching. There's also a set that are printable that was done by another student, and so you can go and print them out and carry them around and remind yourself of what Sengi's 5th discipline has 5 parts. Shared vision's one of them.
Shared vision, shared learning.
Team learning, mental models, personal vision. You got some learning to get back there and remember. And you're all going to help each other, and you're going to help start right now. If you brought something electronic, you can get up onto this page, and I have assigned each one of you a concept, term, or word. So guess what? There's the list. Now, does that mean that you don't need to read anything else if you know what those words are? No. But on the other hand, it gets pretty close to the majority. You should feel pretty confident. If you can go down this list and you know transactional and transformational leadership and you can use it, explain it. The way the test is, after that matching of these things, there are multiple choice questions on the concepts. But the last part is like the Arthur Diane stories, where there's a little story and you have to explain what's going on by a theory, and you have to predict what the leader should do. If you had problems giving me enough information when you did that on that week's response, I told you. Okay? I said your case study needs this, or your story, you know. And so I told you this. So look at my feedback, because otherwise I looked at that and said, if that was on the test, would that pass? And if it was yes, I just went on. Okay, so if you didn't get feedback on your case study. You're understanding what I'm looking for with that. Okay, this is a program called Padlet that you're going to go to. It's a great free thing, by the way, and I just sit and make these little pages up. So, for example, this is one a student did last year. Got the word leadership. And what you're going to do is you have to, it clicks out of the site. I'm going out of Blackboard and into Padlet. And you are going to put stuff up for help your classmates study. So if they don't remember what Mitchell Spady is all about, you can help them. Give them a definition of what it is. Tell them if it's in the book or in the handout where to find more about it. Go out on the internet. One of my favorite places to go is a site called Mind Tools. They have great sites. You can put this thing in Google Scholar and find an article. You can put your term into Google and find images. The same way that I found images of happy and sad, you can find images of power and all kinds of other things. You can find YouTubes. There's all of these things are able to be put in there. So I'm going to go back now. And I'm going to ask for you. You can see, it's not a lot of stuff that I'm asking, because people don't want to spend forever. But you're just going to give them some help. So I'm going to go back now to my list. So say that I'm Amy, and Amy got power. When she gets there, not quite as nice as the last one was. All you have to do is double click on it and it picks up a box. You can type right in that box. You can also use it to get a link. You see all these little icons? You can put a link there, a video. You also, if you wanted to put this PowerPoint in there, anything that's on your desktop, you can just drag it right into there. It will line them up in the order you did them. And I think it lines it up from the bottom to the top. I think it starts with your first thing at the bottom, and it will line it all up there for you. If everybody gets that done by Saturday, then when you're Sunday night and you want to look through things and you've got something you can't quite, and you want to see what somebody else in the class said, then you can look and see what that is. Help each other out with it. So divide and conquer with some of this stuff. If it is your page and you're unsure of what your page is saying, you need to send me an email and say test Padlet in the, then I'll know that you need help right away. Padlet test, because you can't wait till next Tuesday to find out about it. So send me an email that says Padlet in my regular UNO email, and I will help you get some sources for that so that you have the right thing in there, because I know you don't want to be insecure with what it is that you're doing. Right? Questions on the format or the content of the test? When you come next time, I'm going to do a short piece on vision, which isn't going to be tested on this test. I will also have a time where you can ask any questions you want to ask. So there will be an open question like, would you go over house, path, goal again, those types of things? Yes, I will. Then I'll give out the test. When you're done with it, you can turn it in and go for the night. Okay? Questions on this assignment, this Padlet thing? I usually get questions like how much. Some of the things don't need as much as others. Some of them are more likely to need, like French and Raven, you want to know the different parts of it and how it works, that type of thing. But if you have a word like authority, then you want the definition that the book uses, so you're going to go back into your textbook, see where that is, that type of thing. More likely than you go on and Google authority, you're going to get 8 million things, everything from the Nazis to a parent, and so it's kind of your call on what would help teach somebody else this term is what I want to know. What would help you if you didn't know what this concept was? And sometimes 2 or 3 things does it. Oftentimes 2 or 3 things and then some kind of picture or quote or something like that is usually what I get. I'm going to quit talking now. If you want to sit here and work on it a little while we're all around here, you're certainly welcome to do so. You're also welcome to fill out your folder for tonight and do this on your own time in your own space. Whichever is most comfortable for you, I am happy with. This vision is the shared vision that comes out of the level you got in the week before, and it kind of the century vision. It's
Yeah, that's really nice.
Just when I heard you say that.
She said it with I'm gonna talk about
Yes.
that is on the test. That is on the test.
And they threw that on the floor.
It's shared vision.
I was wondering if you use the tenant on the classes and talk the vision and mission to it.
You can have it, I'll go with your black bag. Okay.
I didn't move everything over.
I can hear you.
I need to like, get my little pencil case out. Keep them all in there. Like that's
We eventually, we might phase it out. That's what we're gonna do. I agree.
I don't have it in my list. Is it in my emails?
I tried to turn it in on Blackboard.
Okay. Just try, can you send it to me as an email? Attachment?
I can send it to you and give you the Google Doc link.
That works too.
I was worried about that. I ended up having Microsoft Word, but it's so old
Yeah.
that it might not work.
Send it me Google Docs, but make sure I have permission to open it.
Okay. All right.
Because I can do that. That works just as fine. Then I just manually put the number in, and it's
Okay.
just as easy.
All right. Thank you.
Certainly.